Medic is one of the 4/5 archetypes you can pick at the start of the game. It's a support-based archetype that helps you keep your team topped off at all times. Its skills aid in healing, shielding, and reviving. Before we get into the medic skills, it's important that we go over their trait. Triage increases the player's healing effectiveness by 5% per level, up to 50% at level 10. The trait refers to the stat as healing mod, which totally hasn't confused me for the past year. We can tell it's just healing effectiveness, as the advanced stats tab refers to it as such. Healing effectiveness increases the healing you receive and give to others. All of the medic's skills tooltips update to reflect increases in healing effectiveness. Other sources like Healing Shot do not. When I list healing numbers in the skills section, I'll be referring to their base values. So when I say something heals 50% and in-game it displays as 75%, that's why. The medic's first skill is Wellspring. Upon activation, the player slams the ground, spawning a 3-meter wide healing pool for 15 seconds. This greatly increases blight decay rate and restores 10 health per second to any player or ally standing within the ring. The skill goes on cooldown for 60 seconds as soon as you hit the ground. All of the medic skills immediately go on cooldown when activated. In the case of Wellspring, this is fantastic, as investing into sources of cooldown and skill duration allow you to achieve infinite uptime. If you try to make a second Wellspring, the first one will dissipate. The size of the ring can be influenced by AoE size increases from amplitude and magnifying glass. Healing Shield is, as the name implies, a shield that heals you. When activated, the medic shields themselves and allies within 25 meters for 10 seconds, and then goes on a very long 100-second cooldown. This shield is equivalent to 100% of your max HP, and heals 20% of it over its duration. Should the shield break, the skill will end and prevent any remaining healing. Skill duration sources do increase how long the shield lasts. However, it also slows down the ability's healing rate. This is because the skill heals a percentage over a duration. Increasing that duration means the healing comes slower. The base healing is 2% of your max HP a second. Making that even slower is just not worth it in my eyes. If you stack as much skill duration and cooldown as possible, you can essentially have unlimited uptime. You know what else provides a 20-second shield? Shielded Heart. For solo play at least, Shielded Heart is far better assuming you aren't running summons. You just pop it in, bam, 20-second shield. For cooperative play or building with summons, cooldown is the better option. With Medic as your prime archetype, it's important you get out as much healing as possible. Having that shield up more often means you'll be filling your relic meter faster. Redemption is the Medic's ultimate healing ability. It provides the largest amount of healing and can even revive teammates. The skill can be tapped for a quick burst that revives players and allies, as well as healing 50% of their max HP over 10 seconds. Allies that are revived only receive half the skill's total healing. They also can't be revived again by redemption for 3 minutes. This cooldown, like Challenger's Die Hard, can be removed by dying or resting at a crystal. The skill can also be charged to increase the healing over time. For every second of charging, you'll gain an additional 50% max HP healed up to a total of 200%. This gives the medic a choice. Do you tap the skill to quickly revive your allies, or do you commit to charging it to give them even more health? It's a little more than 3 seconds to fully charge the ability, but in Remnant 2, that's an eternity. The skill also has a 2-minute cooldown, tying it with several others for the longest in the game. Skill duration buffs share the same issue with Healing Shield, where the longer duration slows the healing rate. However, in this case, it's actually not that bad. Redemption provides a comical amount of healing, to the point where extending the skill's duration transforms it from an overkill 10-second heal over time into a really strong 20-second heal over time. Cast speed is something you should absolutely invest into when running Redemption. 90% makes the charge near instant, which is really strong. It doesn't even take much to hit that number. Make sure to not go over 100% cast speed though, as doing so currently causes the skill to infinitely charge and only provide the minimum healing amount. There's also another bug where if Redemption is cast again before the initial duration ends, it will not refresh. Moving on to the medic's perks, Invigorated simply increases your total damage. At max level, this provides a 25% global bonus. Level 6 of the perk increases your total crit chance by 5%. It's as basic as it gets. Alchemist shares the same damage perk, and honestly, I think that's kind of dull. The perk has no connection to being a medic or healing. Besides Alchemist, every archetype's damage perk at the very least complements their playstyle in some way. This could be changed to provide a baseline damage buff, and then be increased for a duration after healing yourself or another. It could also be like Anastasia's Inspiration and be literally any healing. or it could be a micro version of the prime perk and need like 25 HP heals to activate. The additional buff doesn't even have to be damage either, it could be literally any different stat. I'm not suggesting Medic needs buffs, it's incredibly strong as is. I just want every aspect of an archetype to feel unique and defined. Benevolence is the Medic's team perk. It increases your relic efficacy by 15% and heals nearby allies for 30% of your current relic's total healing amount. At level 7, this gets doubled to 60% for allies under 35% max HP. The range for nearby isn't displayed, but it's roughly around this distance. AoE size increases don't seem to have an effect on this range. Not that you'll ever realistically be this far away from a teammate in a boss fight. In dungeons or the overworld, however, yeah, you might end up only healing yourself if your allies are distant. This perk can be a lifesaver in the heat of combat. Popping a relic right as your teammate hits low health is a surefire way to patch them up instantly. The more health a relic heals, the more your allies will benefit from the perk. This does mean that relics that provide little to no actual healing will be ineffective with the perk. The Medic's utility perk is Backbone. This protects your Grey health for 1 additional hit, which becomes 2 hits at level 8. This perk is only really useful if you plan on investing into Grey health regen, or build around having lots of Grey health at once. The only issue with having lots of Grey health at a time is that, on Apocalypse at least, if you get hit while having a ton of it,
you're probably dead!
That leaves the perk's usefulness to Grey health regen setups. Don't get me wrong, Grey health regen can be extremely strong. Keeping as much of it as possible can absolutely save your life. I just think this perk needs something extra to make it more universally beneficial. A simple solution would be to just give the perk either more Grey health conversion, or give the medic a small buff while Grey health is present. The buff could be something like 10% damage reduction, 15% consumable use speed, anything really. Like I mentioned before, I don't think medic needs any real buffs. Making perks more defined and unique is all I wish for. Think about it. When playing medic, how often do you remember that your Grey health stays for 2 more hits? If you're like me and run Salvaged Heart 24/7, then congrats. You're running the one relic that combos with the perk. You could argue that Paper Heart also combos with it, but you're either going to have way too much Grey health and die, or so little that it doesn't really matter. Maybe the perk could also prevent your Grey health from being deleted from sources like Corrosion. Ever go against a boss that applies it when running a Grey health build? Yikes. It's not the worst perk in the game, but it's certainly a contender. Benefactor is the Medic's Relic perk. It increases your relic use speed by 20%, and at level 9 reduces your stagger when using one by 1. Relic use speed applies to both self-application and friendly interactions. The faster speed combined with reduced stagger increases the likelihood of successfully popping a relic. Should you use a confidence booster or another skill that reduces stagger on top of it, only the Cold Embrace of Death can stop you. The Medic's prime perk is Regenerator. While Medic is your primary archetype, you'll receive an extra bar on the HUD. Whenever you heal yourself or your allies, the bar fills up. Once it's completely filled, you'll be rewarded with an additional relic charge. If you're full on charges, the bar will stay filled until one is consumed. The amount of healing required to fill the bar is 250. If you're playing in multiplayer, this value is increased by 50% per extra player. Allies such as Summoner's Minions and Handler's Dog do not count towards this mechanic, and therefore are great candidates for quickly filling the bar in solo play. Any method that provides healing to yourself or others grants progress. Benevolence, Healing Shot, Archetype skills, Shared Healing from Burden of the Divine, Life Leech, etc. Note that the act of reviving does not count towards this bar. Players revived have their health set to max instantly, therefore no true healing has been done. This perk allows for potentially unlimited relic charges, although the concept is already possible with the use of trinkets as you'll see later on. Early on in Remnant 2, this single-handedly wins fights. The ability to support your team or yourself with a nearly unending supply of heals can carry the worst of teams to victory. For Wellspring's build, I wanted to take advantage of the fact that it is the only medic skill that purely benefits from both skill cooldown and duration. Using the right set of trinkets, fragments, and traits, we can achieve infinite uptime of both it and Stone Skin from Alchemist. Unlimited heals, stagger reduction, and status immunity, you're practically invulnerable, and in practice it really feels like it. Only the most hard-hitting of moves or extreme focus fire can take you down. Since I would be confined to my Wellspring, I decided to fully commit to standing still and ran Inert Overcharger as my necklace. Burden of the Rebel, Stargazer, Black Pawn Stamp, and Ring of Retribution were my choice of rings. Weapons aren't really important in the setup, you can genuinely run whatever best suits your current situation. My fragments were skill cooldown, duration, and healing effectiveness. Xenoplasm is a must, and these are the traits you're going to want to invest in. Heavier armors are recommended. I considered running Litos, but ultimately decided against it since you'd be watching 2 builds in a row using the set, and that just seems a bit boring. If you want to be as effective as possible, however, go for it. The build gameplay loop is just using your skills as soon as they're off cooldown. With this setup, you'll always have access to both. If you come across a fight that needs you to slightly move or dodge, I recommend swapping out Inert Overcharger for literally any other damaging necklace. If anything goes exceptionally wrong, you have your ultimate move, Tranquil Heart. This absolute beast doubles your regen for 15 seconds, which includes Wellspring. 34 health regen a second combined with regrowth and the passive healing from Tranquil Heart means unless something one-shots you, you cannot die. Some moves, however, just deal way too much damage though, requiring you to perform an evade every so often. Even at its absolute limit, this build isn't perfect. Against a large portion of bosses, however, this setup is great. Ones that push you around a lot or perform rapid hitting melee attacks might still give you some trouble. In those situations, I recommend swapping some gear around. The more effective tanking strat would be to use Alchemist as your prime to get 3 more concoctions. This does come at the cost of not having unlimited relic charges, however you're so tanky it's unlikely you'll need all 10. I really don't have any complaints about Wellspring. It's pretty good all things considered. If I had to give any kind of suggestion, I'd say increase the default pool size to 4, maybe 5 meters. If you run both Amplitude and Magnifying Glass, it is much more comfortable to move around in. Perhaps giving it an extra meter would help the skill feel less claustrophobic, and reduce the need for both to feel comfy. I wasn't too sure how to go about building around Healing Shield. I've always just used the skill as a panic button. Its 10-second duration combined with a 100-second cooldown makes it really difficult to effectively build for. As previously mentioned, skill duration can extend the shield's uptime, but it comes at the cost of a slower heal rate. I truly believe the best way to build for the shield is just to invest in cooldown. In my case, I only had 40%, making the skill recharge every minute. The rest of the build was dedicated to a Tormented Heart setup. Summoner was my sub-archetype, mainly for explosion damage, and so I could use Reaver for Blood Bond. My trinkets were Emergency Switch, Conservation Seal, Restriction Cord, Burden of the Warlord, and Blasting Cap Ring. I had weapons, although I didn't use them once during the demonstration. My fragments were Consumable Use Speed, Cooldown, and Max Health. Emergency Switch and Conservation Seal grant you unlimited relic charges below half health. Restriction Cord keeps us at half constantly, allowing for infinite spam. This is another build where you could flip around the archetypes. Since you already have unlimited relic charges, you might as well. It's only really suitable for close-range encounters, but in those scenarios it excels. Since you'll always be using a relic, the stagger reduction from Benefactor will be putting in some heavy lifting. This is another silly build, as you can tell. It's by no means fast, but it is pretty safe. If you wanted, you could ditch Restriction Cord and pick up some more damage. You just need to be careful about using charges too quickly, and use your actual weapons. As far as where to use Healing Shield, I just pop it whenever. Since it gives your max health in shield, you can just wait for a move you think is too much to handle. Healing Shield in solo play is very much an accent to your build, rather than a major element. Co-op is where it really shines. Even then, I still pick it when playing solo. If I could make one change to the skill, I'd reduce the cooldown from 100 seconds to 90. Maybe the healing could also scale with duration, like how dots do with Affliction now. However, for the most part, I think the skill is perfectly fine. For Redemption, I decided to run a build similar to the one I used with Wellspring. Handler was my sub-archetype of choice due to its skills being able to achieve unlimited uptime just like Wellspring. In this setup, all 3 dog skills are great choices. They lend the build some much needed flexibility. If you need defense and aggro pull, use Guard Dog. If you need more healing and movement speed, run Support Dog. And if you need just a little bit more damage, use Attack Dog. My trinkets included Legacy Protocol, Kinetic Cyclostone, Burden of the Rebel, Stargazer, and Stone of Continuance. My fragments were Skill Cooldown, Duration, and Cast Speed. As for Concoction, you can run whatever you want in this setup. We're already hitting the cooldown cap, so Xenoplasm isn't necessary. The idea with this build is to provide constant heals and buffs for your entire team. The healing is basically on par with Wellspring, with the added benefit of being able to revive your allies and, move around. The skills from Handler are just the cherry on top. Alas, even with max skill cooldown and duration, we can't achieve permanent redemption uptime. That is, unless we run Diverting Heart. Popping one lets the ability recharge with the buff remaining for a few seconds. As long as we don't use it again too soon, we're golden. Using Diverting Heart does mean we won't have access to a source of self-burst healing. It also means Benevolence won't provide any healing to our allies. But as long as we aren't taking hits back to back, Redemption will quickly patch up any small mistakes made. If you have an ally running a tankier setup, you can easily farm relic charges from them. The build is by no means flawless. You end up investing most of your gear into keeping Redemption up as often as possible. This comes at the cost of having little to no damage buffing sources. For this reason, you may want to stick with Attack Dog. You could always swap out Stone of Continuance or Kinetic Cycle Stone if you're comfortable with charging Redemption a bit longer and having a little less duration. All 3 dog skills will still have unlimited uptime if you remove the former. Taking off Kinetic Cycle Stone, however, is a bit riskier. 90% cast speed makes the skill charge nearly instantly. 70% is still fast, but definitely leaves you open to being hit. It goes without saying, Gifted and Flashcaster are required traits for this build. Besides the non-refreshing bug, I think Redemption is a perfect skill. Its cooldown is very long, but with good reason. Similar to Healing Shield, you can just run the skill as is and not really build around it. I find it a very comfy skill to use in co-op when running Medic as my sub-archetype. Having it in your back pocket just in case something goes wrong is a perfectly fine way to use it. Also, it's possible to revive yourself with the skill in co-op, which I find hilarious. So how does Medic perform on Apocalypse? In general, I think the Medic's biggest downside, as to be expected, is the lack of damage. While it's certainly true you will notice a big dip in damage compared to every other archetype when playing on Apocalypse, the Medic's ability to protect themselves and their allies absolutely makes up for the fact that they have no real damage capability. Wars of attrition aren't for everyone. I fully understand that. Realistically speaking, it's better to kill whatever you're trying to fight faster than worrying about healing and such. But not every player is a god. Some players really need skills like Wellspring, Healing Shield, and Redemption to win, and that's totally fine. I love Medic. Medic is my favorite archetype in the game. Just look back at my Meatball Medic video. While Medic isn't going to give you the biggest damage numbers or the highest dopamine hits, it's just kinda nice to have healing and comfort in the fact that you don't have to be the best to win. So yeah, I think Medic is Apocalypse ready. The Medic is a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. What it lacks in offensive prowess, it more than makes up for in raw survivability. Some look down on the Medic, believing the best defense is a good offense. To some players, that may be true, but when the going gets tough, they'll be glad a medical professional is by their side.